The truth hurts and Canada is in a recession, but luckily Donald Trump is here to save Canada. We just got US and Canadian job numbers same day, and the difference is striking. And we have an interesting story on a major ICE crackdown on a new manufacturing facility, which I think helps kind of paint the job picture in the changes we are going to see moving forward. And economists in Canada are now getting serious enough to call out the Canadian government and say the problems are so much bigger than just Donald Trump, and we can't just blame him for everything. Speaking of, we now have allegations that the federal Liberal government has known for years that their greenwashing and new economy and all of these changes that they have forced Canadians into have been bad and would be reversed on in the future. And Mark Carney's hypocrisy is on full display because not only is the greenwashing continuing, he's doubling down on it with his elbows up approach. It's horrible for Canada's future. And I have a big warning for Americans because we saw this happen in Canada first. Some online behavior that's very strange that you guys need to look out for, and Canadians are already pretty aware of. And at the end of the video, I have a thread for Americans and Canadians on how awesome society could be if we just focused on building domestically. There's a lot to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it.
Got a Fox News alert on your money. Monthly jobs report is out today, and 22,000 jobs were added last month.
What? Green arrow pointing down.
That is far fewer than expected. Unemployment rate ticking up a tenth of a point to 4.3%. Here's the market reaction. We're trending higher. That might portend more rate cuts on the interest rate. Kevin Hassett's with me now, Director of the National Economic Council. Sir, thank you for your time from North Lawn. Good morning to you. Let's go ahead and get your hot take. It's not the number you wanted. It was not the number that was expected. How come?
When we get into the Canadian numbers and like the contrast, how the federal government reacts to losing 66,000 jobs versus the U.S. going, oh, we're not growing as fast as we'd like. And they're like, wow, that's a big deal. You're not growing as fast as you like. Canada's like, minus 66,000. No big deal. We're in a recession. We don't care.
Right. Well, one of the things we know is that they've been really at BLS struggling with bad response rates. And Goldman Sachs put out a study yesterday that said that they've been messing up the August seasonal so much that over the last 10 to 15 years, they've tended to have to revise up the number by around almost 70,000 jobs when they get the new final surveys.
So it's their fault?
And so, well, I'm saying that this number, we expect this number will be...
I went to left-leaning coverage like CNN, MSNBC, CBS, all of that coverage as well. And a lot of them were even willing to admit August is one of the messier numbers and often is revised upward. So
revised up. That's been the pattern over and over. And if that happens, then it'll be consistent with all the other indicators we're seeing. Industrial production is at an all-time high. Capital spending is up 8% over the first half of the year after it being mostly flat under Joe Biden.
And capital spending is big for the jobs numbers and the for Canada. So put a pin in that and remember that when we get to it.
So within the jobs report we got today, there are a lot of really interesting and positive patterns. Thing one is that all the job creation is private sector job creation. Government workers are actually, their employment declined by 100,000.
Another stark difference between most U.S. and Canada job prints. I mean, historically, the U.S. job prints, a lot of it was public sector jobs, government jobs, especially under Biden. In Canada, it's pretty much been 10 years of public sector growth, at the expense of private sector. So even though in the U.S., as of right now, it's like, oh, it's only 22,000 jobs, they're almost exclusively private.
All of the job creation is native-born workers, whereas about half of the job creation under Biden was foreign-born workers. And so there are a lot of real positive things to see. And the final thing is that the wage numbers are fantastic. The wage growth is almost at 4%, which means that the typical wage earner in America right now has gotten a $500 raise already because of Donald Trump's policy.
Okay,
So speaking of foreign-born employees and wage suppression and all of that stuff, this story, I think this is a very, very important thing to kind of connect the differences in job numbers. The U.S. is cracking down on these mega plants and these other things that have been hiding foreign workers who are working illegally or potentially in gray areas. And I think that's going to be so big moving forward for the U.S.? Because I've got a big talking point on this.
Well, Stuart, it was reportedly chaos here yesterday. This is one of ICE's largest immigration raids in history, as they detained around 450 illegal immigrants here. Now, this is
I think that number's been revised up to 475.
A massive plant. It's thousands of acres, so we can't get close to the actual joint construction site where this all happened, but law enforcement cars from several agencies were lining the street yesterday. People inside the Hyundai plant at the time told local reporters ICE came in with multiple military vehicles. They say the feds scoured through cars, people were running, hopping fences, and buses filled with people were seen leaving the site, according to local reports. Here's a Homeland Security agent on the scene yesterday.
So you have to wonder how much infrastructure has been built around getting lower wage workers, you know, international workers, people who have come over illegally, if they've got buses there set up for as like escape capsules.
We are actively conducting an investigation into unlawful employment practices going on at this massive multi-hundred acre construction site behind me.
This is where I want to address one of the main pushback talking points whenever people are talking about the ICE crackdowns or in Canada getting rid of the temporary foreign workers, whatever it is. There's massive areas that used to be major industrial productive areas in the US, in Canada. In the US, you have the Appalachians, you have the Rust Belt, you have these massive multi-state areas where people now have access to almost no employment, you know, where it was built around coal or built around steel that weren't being invested in as much, where you have affordable areas, where you have a workforce who's ready. Yes, there's obviously going to be drug problems, a lot of things. You're going to have to do a bit of revamping to kind of create a work culture in that area again. But a lot of those people are thinking they had no hope before, but now they're getting provided with hope because they know as this reindustrializing happens in the US, there's millions of acres of industrial land through those two areas that I just said, where there's also people surrounding it looking for jobs. As we know, industry and manufacturing can be a zero-sum game. So when people are competing, a lot of it actually moved down to the Sun Belt, including a lot of Canadian companies moving down to the Sun Belt. Speaking of, I used to work at Sun Belt. It's always funny when you say that. But you have, like I said, Appalachia's, Rust Belt, areas that are getting focus on them again. And what I think is going to be a really interesting trend from the reindustrialization of America. This is going to take a while. So everybody, well, Donald Trump hasn't fixed everything yet. It's been 8 months. He has made actual signed agreements of new businesses that are starting. This is why the contrast between the US and Canada is so huge, because Canada has nothing signed. We are only losing. There's two fundamentally different plans right now between the two countries. And I think obviously America's on the right track, because not only that, people haven't mentioned this. I've not seen this talking point anywhere. I think it's very important. People need the idea that there is a way for them to climb the ladder. They can afford a house. They can have kids. They want upward mobility. And if these other super affordable, lower population areas in the US start to reindustrialize, people are going to be able to afford a house. People are going to be able to afford a family. And then they're not going to be food deserts anymore because the population isn't going to pile into these major cities. You're not going to have to move halfway across the country to go to Austin so you can get a job, or move to New York or one of the other major cities where people have to go to get a job. And it has to do with the thread I'm going to be talking about at the end of this video, which I think is such a big eye-opener for Canada and the US. But let's get into the Canadian numbers because it is not looking good.
Let's bring in Brendan Bernard. He's a senior economist at Indeed. Brendan, thanks for taking the time for CTV. Much appreciated. Your thoughts on these numbers?
Yeah, it was a rough month. And this isn't the first weak jobs report we've gotten in Canada so far this year, but it's the first time when we've seen two back-to-back on the downswing. And so that these numbers are volatile, but that suggests that there's a bit of a trend going on. We saw the unemployment rate finally push past 7.0% to 7.1%. I don't think this is all just the trade war. There have been, like, the Canadian labor market has gotten weaker over the past few years. And there's some signs of that kind of like gradual weakness also in today's numbers. But the trade war is another factor, like, on top of that weakness that's kind of weighing things down as well.
And this is what I have been saying since the beginning, when all of the liberal economists were so scared to call it, I'm not some numbers genius. Canada has had major economic problems for a very long time. For a decade, we have been spinning our tires. We've been bending over backwards, canceling a project, announcing another project, doing so. We've never committed to anything. We've never grown anything. And it's just been free money. It's just been quantitative peopling. It's just been a lot of cover that Canada has been able to use up until Donald Trump said, hey, I want to get serious about trying to fix America again. And Canada said, rut-row, Shaggy, because all of a sudden, all of the easy money and the skating by because we were able to huddle up to the US for warmth, we had to get serious again. And this is why I'm not joking. And when I have titles of Trump is here to save Canada, it's been a way for Canada to do a self-audit and go, oh yeah, we're really effing up here because we are not competitive.
I'm wondering what you think this means, bigger picture, for the possibility of a recession. We know that the second quarter, we saw a contraction. We've got numbers now coming in for July and August, showing some trend lines here. Now we've got these numbers. What's your take?
Yeah, well, whether it's that kind of like negative quarters in a row, I'm not sure about that. I think there were some signs of like in the July GDP numbers of stabilization, but whether that specific mark is hit isn't as important as just like what's happened to the economy, where we've taken a dent from this trade war. We saw the exports plunge in Q2, like slightly edge back up after, but that's just like a permanent hit to the economy that unless like things like really clear up and there's no signs of that in the near term, that while Canada in some ways it actually has been spared the worst of how things could have gone with the tariffs, with given how the MCA trade deal has protected a lot of trade. What's been put in place has been enough to dent the economy.
And that's up for negotiation. And that's where the scary thing is if Canada doesn't get serious, especially when Canada is getting used as the example for standing up to the US and then bowing down. Have you liked the video yet? We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you like what we talk about here, feel free to subscribe. Love to have you on board. The new members, you guys rock. Let's get back to it.
Do you see anywhere in the next month, 2 months, any type of deal or backing down to a lower rate with India?
I would
10,000%.
expect, like you saw it in Canada, right? The Carney got elected with this term elbows up, meaning let's fight with America. They put on retaliatory tariffs. They were all bravado. And what happened? Their GDP negative 1.6%, unemployment rocketing towards 8%. And what did Carney just do? He just finally dropped his retaliatory tariffs. So I think.
Yeah, so I do think, look, first of all, as we just addressed, it just hit 7.1 for unemployment in Canada, which is high. I mean, the US is at 4.3. That would just show how apathetic Canada's become about the economy. And that's why we get titles like this. Putrid Canada Jobs Report heaps pressure on Carney and BOC. And they continue to try and protect. Oh, the report shows an economy badly wounded by the tariff war with the US and trouble in white-collar and service sectors with traders boosting the odds of a September rate cut about 80%. Well, can we really keep blaming Donald Trump? Or has Canada just been self-inflicting damage for well over a decade now? I think it's probably that, and even this guy says it too.
Understandably, everybody in Canada is concentrating on this tariff threat and the need to lessen our reliance upon the U.S. economy, diversify around the rest of the world, build up our domestic economy. The note basically says one thing. Let's not forget that before the tariff threat, we had a couple of big problems. Before Trump came along, before the tariffs came along, number one being our terrible productivity record. Very weak business investment, 41 cents per dollar machinery equipment per worker, what the United States has. We got all kinds of obstacles in our domestic market. You know, the federal and provincial governments have struck down a few domestic trade barriers, but there are many, many of them left.
So when he's talking about those trade barriers there, we have barriers between the provinces that can't do business with ourselves. We can't do business inside of Canada. How could we have ever considered ourselves a globally competitive country when we can't do business with ourselves? So as he says, and when they're talking about CapEx, you know, capital investment in businesses, in workers, businesses didn't do that in Canada. This is it directly being called out very, 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 very late to the game. We used quantitative peopling as the only way to grow because we had cheap money, we had unlimited Indians from India, and we had, real estate continued to grow. People were able to borrow. That was the only thing keeping Canada's economy alive, which has now led to Carney unveiling billions in aid for Canada tariff-hit firms. They're only getting hurt because we had no economic fundamentals. And now the government, where we're already in record-setting deficits, we're probably going to smash through double the deficit projections already. They're promising billions of more dollars off the back of us announcing Canada just lost $500 million in taxpayer dollars on a failed green project that they had committed $4.4 billion to. Private industry has known forever that these green incentives are horrible for Canada. It's horrible for industry. It's horrible for companies wanting to come invest in Canada. Here they are calling it out after Carney said, oh, don't worry, I'm going to remove the green initiative for all the EVs. We're going to actually delay it. We're not actually going to remove it. And the delaying is even worse because now companies go, okay, well, you're going to push it back by 2 years. Well, we're definitely not going to invest in Canada if you're only pushing it back by 2 years, because how do we know what's going to happen in 2 years? People argue Canada is not the 51st state, but the only reason that this is being changed is because of Donald Trump. So if you want something done in Canada, call up Donald Trump.
The Prime Minister is delaying that plan to force automakers to hit minimum sales levels for electric vehicles. He's deferring the requirement for the 2026 model year. He's characterizing it as part of a plan to help sectors hardest hit by the tariffs. He says they've got enough on their plate right now. We're joined now by Brian Kingston, President and CEO of the Canadian Vehicle Manufacturers Association. Thanks very much for joining us, Brian. You guys are welcoming this. You've been calling for it for months now, saying, look, it's just unreasonable. Sales of electric cars don't justify it. So tell us why you're happy with this news.
Well, we're definitely happy because this regulation is causing huge damage to the industry right now. The auto sector is under immense pressure. Through the first 2 quarters of 2025, automakers have been exposed to $12 billion in tariff costs. And so we've been making the case to the federal government that at a time where we're trying to protect this industry, protect the footprint here in Canada, we can't control the outcome of a trade deal with the Americans, but we can definitely make our own economy more competitive.
That's the biggest thing. We can't control what the Americans do. We can try and get a deal with the Americans. We can try and build a stronger relationship with America. We can stop being antagonistic to America. But the only thing Canada can do is create a domestic environment where investors want to come and are interested in investing in Canada. This was a stupid regulation that everybody hated outside of the ideologically driven Liberals. And even they saw the writing on the wall because top Carney advisor wanted a list of oil and gas cap off-ramps in 2023. The documents show, for people who don't know, there are production caps in the oil and gas sector in Canada. One of Prime Minister Mark Carney's top advisors was hedging his bets against the Liberal government's oil and gas emissions cap months before it was announced in late 2023, according to the documents obtained through an Access to Information Act. This type of email looking for off-ramps suggests that the federal government knew all along the emissions cap was a non-starter, said Schulz. And Schulz is the Alberta Environment Minister, Rebecca Schulz. It shows that you have senior officials within the Liberal government knowing that this is not going to work, which confirms what data has been telling us all along. So basically, the Liberals have been manipulating Canadians. They have been trying to manipulate markets. Actually, our program's probably very dumb. We're going to have some plans in place when we are going to get rid of these caps, how things are going to change. It makes it impossible for Canada to compete when we are being driven by green ideology, decarbonization, all of these things. Look at this announcement here. He's doubling down on these things that we know his top guys have been saying none of these plans are going to work. This is at the expense of trying to get a deal done with the US. This is at the expense of building Fortress America.
And will take starts from the tax system and works its way out so that the investments in decarbonization are happening here in Canada. You will see some elements of that coming with the major projects when those announcements are made as well, but there'll be a more comprehensive approach for climate competitiveness as part of our global industrial competitiveness strategy.
He's insane. He's clearly trying to destroy Canada. Because if he actually cared about saving the environment, if he actually cared about green initiatives, he would remove the 100% tariffs from Chinese EVs. I don't want him to do that. I don't care about EVs. I don't want that in Canada. But if he cared, if he wasn't a hypocrite, he would remove that from the EVs as they crush our canola sector, which is one of the largest exports of Canada. But for some reason, he doesn't do that, which would be way better for the environment. According to them, it would be speeding up the transition to electric vehicles.
Prime Minister Judy Trin with CTV News. Given that your government is pausing some EV targets and reevaluating the policy, and in your own words, you said you would like to pursue new options to bring more affordable electric vehicles to Canada. Does that mean that your government is also considering lifting the 100% tariffs that your predecessor put on electric vehicles made in China that have triggered punishing tariffs on the canola industry in Western Canada?
Thank you for the question, Judy. The first thing is to say, from our perspective on climate competitiveness, is to develop the competitiveness of our industries everywhere from the resource sector through to manufacturing, through to services, so that Canadian businesses can compete. We can grow foreign markets. We can grow jobs and sustainable jobs here in Canada. And in that regard, there's a series of measures that we're taking and will take.
Thanks for the word salad there, Mark. With his connections to China, it's really strange. But speaking of foreign interference, the ticker there says President Trump says India and Russia are lost to China, which is quite possibly true. So with all that going on, I found this quick little update on the story that's going on in Venezuela pretty interesting.
Before I leave you, just want to ask about this developing news that we're following. CBS News now learning 2 Venezuelan fighter jets actually flew over a U.S. Navy ship as a show of force. Explain to us why this happened and the message this may send.
Yeah, this was likely in response to that lethal strike that the U.S. took on drug cartels, alleged drug cartel members, killing several individuals earlier this week. And these 2 F-16 Venezuelan fighter jets flew over the USS Jason Dunham, and the Defense Department, according to multiple officials, essentially confirming this news to CBS.
And I found that really interesting, again, for a few reasons. One, Venezuela has one of the top largest oil reserves in the whole world. As well, Venezuela is not that far from the US. And when we are seeing a multipolar world start to develop, and obviously China's trying to get their power and all these things, Canada has oil, the US has oil, but having access to one of the largest oil reserves in the world, I don't know what's going on over there. I just think if something could clean up Venezuela, because it's kind of a nonsense country right now, it would be kind of huge for our side of the world over here. That being said, speaking of like foreign interference and changes, the Aesthetica account said the India lobby has started paying conservative influencers to spread propaganda about how India loves Trump and it's a good ally. These people will sell out their country for a couple grand, confirmed from a source who received a similar offer. And in Canada, we have a ton of foreign interference from India. So it's interesting to see this sort of heat up in the US as they're wanting to get more of their H-1B visas and the recruiters and all that stuff. So just be mindful who you follow, who you listen to. A lot of these people were kind of saying the exact same statement in their posts, allegedly. We don't know if they actually took money from India or what the situation is, but I can promise you right now, and if you've been following my channel, you probably believe me, I will not be taking any money from India, and I will not be talking about the positives of India on this channel. However, that being said, I might sell out to Russia if they send me like a mail order bride, get me caught up in some sort of honeypot operation. So if that ever happens, it's because I fell for a hot Russian lady. Speaking of Eastern Europe, we have this awesome thread here about Poland, and I actually think there's so many takeaways here. Everybody thinks you need to go global. Everybody thinks you need to go diverse and, multiculturalism, but we've watched Poland just become a $1 trillion economy without open borders, without giving up religion, and without tearing down its traditions. What did Poland do that the West won't? I think this is really important more than ever for North America. Back in 1990, Poland was broke and gray, fresh out of Soviet control. It had crumbling factories, dull housing blocks, and a weak economy. No one expected it to become EU's quiet success story. If Poland was not a white European country, it would be getting front page news on how much they're crushing it economically. But they've become a vibrant society. Old towns have been rebuilt with care. Churches have been restored. This is all awesome. And While the rest of Europe is debating statues, Poland preserves cathedrals, restoring medieval squares, opening places to the public. Does that sound familiar? Have we been tearing down statues in North America, Canada, and the US? Krakow, Wrocław, Gdansk, and Warsaw. Man, that's Polish is a tough language. I love sauerkraut, but come on. Tourism is booming not because Poland sold out, but because it doubled down on what makes Poland Poland. Again, we want a diverse world. We want a multicultural world. Just everybody in their own countries. You want to go to a country and experience the people there, experience their country there. You don't want it blending all together. While others erase their roots, Poland crowns its faith. Literally, Poland officially named Jesus Christ their king in 2016. The economy keeps growing. The unemployment's under 3%. They have low inflation, high exports, and foreign investors are lining up. There's huge potential there, and they just go on. I'm actually going to share that thread in the description below because I think reading into all the details, it's actually worth going through. It was really interesting, and I think it just goes to show if you have a society that has high social cohesion, high civic duty, people who want to build a better country, they want to build for the next generations, you can see how important it would be, and especially with all of these things changing, I think this is such a wake-up call for the US and Canada, and luckily Trump's here to save Canada with all of Carney's dumb announcements as Canada enters a recession. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We are trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We're trying to grow the channel. All the channel members, all the new subscribers, you guys rock. Thanks for coming on board. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can do it through YouTube as well. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.